Hello and welcome. I'm Almita Cooper. I'm today's moderator. I'm the National Manager for Health Equity at Moms Clean Air Force. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of another of Moms Clean Air Force's national conversations about clean air, climate, health equity, and inequity. Through the interactive exchange between our intergenerational questioners aged 11 to 91 and our panel of experts, we will discover answers to the root questions. Are you worried about climate and the climate crisis, or ever worry that you are not doing enough? We are breaking through the barrier of silence about the overlooked mental health impacts of the climate crisis through candid conversations and questions that our viewing audience would ask if they were able to be with us here today. Our emotions about climate can vary wildly. We worry about wildfires, hurricanes, whether or not to have children, general anxiousness, extreme weather events, forced migration because of extreme weather events, or simply whether it's safe to say anything to others about how we are feeling, possibly because of cultural stigmas. Increasingly, people at every age are reporting feeling worried about climate change. To help us navigate through these thorny issues, we are joined by our expert panel, Dr. Venise Curry, who has harnessed her unique background as a medical doctor and trained psychiatrist to address the intersecting needs of underserved populations in the Western United States. Ms. Lorena Saavedra Smith is a holistic eco-somatic therapist, mindfulness guide, and leading expert in stress management, spirituality, embodiment awareness, and reconnecting with nature. And third, Ms. Liz Hurtado is a mom, advocate for community health and environmental justice, and a national field manager supporting the Eco-Madres program at Moms Clean Air Force, which focuses on engagement with Latino communities. To learn more about our impressive panel, I encourage you to go to our website at www.momscleanairforce.org, as you see on your screen. Keeping in mind that health equity is one of the connecting threads of today's conversation, let's hear questions from Atlanta, Georgia, Washington, D.C., and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Let's start in our nation's capital with Carlos Fenwick. Carlos?
My name is Carlos Thomas Fenwick, and I am a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach in Washington, D.C. I have an interest in climate and mental health environmental justice because I want to see the promotion of mental health remedies geared towards proper exercise and nutrition. How essential do you see exercise and nutrition in improving mental health when it relates to climate environmental justice?
I would love to take that question. And Carlos, thank you so much for it. I totally relate to what you're saying. And exercise and nutrition played a critical role in improving our mental health, especially in the context of climate and environmental justice. The environmental crisis has brought about significant changes in our ecosystem, leading to decrease in biodiversity, air pollution, and exposure to harmful chemicals. These changes have an adverse impact in our physical health, which in turn affect also our mental health. Engaging in physical exercises and consuming a well-balanced diet that contemplates eating with the seasons and no over-harvesting can help mitigate some of the effects of climate change in our mental health. Exercise in itself promotes the release of endorphins, which helps reduce stress and anxiety while improving our overall mood, and it can help us to combat the symptoms of eco-depression and emotional dysregulation. So by choosing food resources and sources, and engaging in eco-friendly exercises, we can promote environmental justice and contribute to the mitigation of climate change. For instance, reducing our consumption of meat-based diets and opting for plant-based alternatives can help reduce greenhouse gas emission, which in turn can help to mitigate the adversity and the effects of climate change in our mental health. I also would like to acknowledge that physical exercise can take many forms, and it's essential to consider that culturally and historical physical activities have played a significant importance. Traditional ancestral dancing, for example, and other cultural relevant physical activities can provide the same mental health benefits that fitness routines at the gym will also do. And so can provide not only the physical activity and the benefits of that, but promoting cultural preservation and identity. So in summary, Carlos, exercise and nutrition played a vital role in providing mental health when it comes to, and especially when it comes to mental health and climate environment.
Listening to your answer, Lorena, it reminds me that your health can be both physical and mental health. Now let's hear another question from Carlos, our Washingtonian.
How can you integrate proper nutrition and exercise in a legislative response at the local and federal level, or does legislation already exist? If so, what is it?
I think that the key to this answer is advocacy. Advocacy for green spaces is a crucial component of promoting proper nutrition and exercise at the local and federal level. Legislation can play a significant role in increasing and maintaining green spaces that promote physical activity and access to healthy foods. At the local level, for example, being an agent of change in our own counties that and require the developers to incorporate green spaces into their projects can ensure that these new developments provide spaces for parks, playgrounds, and other outdoors and recreational spaces that promote physical activity that, in effect, will also promote our mental health. One of my favorites are community gardens and urban farming initiatives that certainly promote access to fresh food, healthy products, and support local food systems. This is one of my favorite ways of activism and advocacy. And I know that in the federal level, legislation can provide funding for programs that increase access to healthy food and support sustainability and micro agriculture. And I believe that the Land and Water Conservation Funds provide funding to protect and maintain national parks, forests, and other public lands that promote, of course, physical activity and access to nature. So advocacy for green spaces can also improve community-led initiatives that promote physical activity, promote the access to health foods. So overall, integrating proper nutrition and exercises and proper exercise with legislation responses at the local and federal level can promote and can be sustainable for our overall health. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Carlos and Lorena. Now let's take the opportunity to hear from the youngest member of our intergenerational group, Chloe.
Hi, my name is Chloe. I'm 11 years old and I live in Atlanta with my family. I'm interested in climate change and mental health because sometimes when I hear that the planet is warming up and icebergs are melting, I get nervous and wonder what will happen. Will this planet be livable when I'm an adult in the next 10 to 15 years? This scares me. Is this something I should be worried about?
Liz, I think you are the best person to answer this question.
Chloe, first, I'd like to tell you that you're not alone. These feelings are completely normal and valid, and many young people like yourself and adults like myself are feeling many emotions like sadness, anxiety, or fear around the topic of climate change. So I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell my 10-year-olds. Parents like me will never stop fighting to protect you or your health or the world that you live in. Yes, the earth is changing, but we still have time to make a difference. And it's so great that you're curious. And I know many young people like yourself have a lot of questions around climate change. So it's important that we keep talking about it and keep talking about the feelings that it brings. So when you experience these big feelings, there are a lot of things that you can do. You can get up and move your body, stretch, jump, dance. You can go outside and enjoy the nature, just reconnect with nature. My kids and I enjoy going on long bike rides or walking on trails. We just really work to embrace the present moment. And you can also get creative. Maybe you like painting or drawing or even journaling. But whatever it is that you choose, just remember that protecting your mental health and practicing self-care is of most importance.
Great suggestions, Liz, and thank you, Chloe. From our youngest participant, now let's hear from Jean Ann Doradas, who is a nonagenarian in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Hello, my name is Jean Ann Durades. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a very white state, and I am involved in community and civic activities, trying to make things better for everybody. So I'm involved in the museum, I'm involved in restorative justice, and other things that I think are important so that we can all have a livable life. So, how do we change the power dynamic between the non dominant and dominant groups so that we can level the playing field in making policies and laws about climate and environment and other mental health changes and pollution that the way they affect the non-dominant population, because we're the ones that are being affected adversely, and the dominant community has no real awareness, because I believe they have built a system that to maintain their control, and you can't have control if everybody is equal. Now I know our problems with mental health were dealing with slavery, and I guess we still are dealing with slavery. Anyway, the issues that surround slavery. So how do we make that change? Because mental health is so important for our marginalized communities to live life to the fullest, and they can't do it if their health isn't good.
Venise, will you please respond to Jean Ann Doradas's questions and comments?
Yes, and thank you so much for the question, Ms. Doradas. I feel like I first want to thank you for your work and for the fact that you have consistently been a part of your community working towards improving the issues that you see. And so I have great appreciation for the fact that all of us stand on the shoulders of folks like you who have done the work and continue to encourage us. So thank you for your work. You bring up a really excellent point, and that is to not avoid the historical context in which we find ourselves in this moment of talking about climate change and mental health, because the two are so intimately connected. And the historical struggles of African Americans cannot be separated from how we find ourselves in the position of contributing less to climate change and yet experience it in a most impactful and inequitable way. And so the fact that Black and Brown communities are bearing the brunt is not an accident. It really does reflect the structural changes, the structural discrimination that is really baked into our health system. And I want to introduce this concept of the political determinants of health, because we always talk about the social determinants of health, but that extra layer that sits over the top of how we experience health inequities is really our political system. And if we don't acknowledge that, we are always going to be fiddling around at the edges and at the outcomes, but not really attacking the root cause. And so your question about how do we talk about power and power dynamics in terms of climate and mental health really makes sense to me, because that's sort of where I came into the picture. Part of the work and part of the solution is really to look at voting, to look at government, and to look at policies. And so these are three tenets that are outlined in the Political Determinants of Health, a book by Daniel Dawes that really talks about the fact that we can't get away from looking at political situations in terms of trying to solve some of these issues around health inequities. And so voting and having your voice heard. It isn't enough to just register. It isn't enough to sometimes participate. We do have to really establish how we can commit to making sure that our voices and our priorities are really reflected when we go to the polls. And that's, understanding what the issues are, understanding how we can play a role, and engaging our communities, our families at the core, our communities, to understand how we can participate more fully. Our government is really supposed to work for us. And so how do we make that happen? Well, the engagement process requires that we be strategic. We understand what the issues are, and we have some planning that really puts us in a position to build power, because, we are not going to flip the script without having figured out what are the issues, who are the stakeholders, and how do we organize ourselves in a position where we have strength in numbers and can actually make the changes that we really want to see. And so that leads to changing policies. How do we get those policy changes? Well, we can elect people who represent us more fully, but we also have to stay connected to the issue. And that's why I'm so thrilled that we're talking about climate and mental health, because without organizing, without working to get people who respect us and respond to our priorities, without working at the elected official level, we won't be able to change policy. If we do get policies enacted, we then still have to make sure that they are implemented correctly. And so all of this work requires organizing, addressing the root cause, and not shying away from the discrimination that is at the core. And then gathering and making sure that we are creating a network, existing organizations, existing allies, creating new allies and new networks that help to amplify the work that we're doing around the issues that are really important to us. And the health inequity is only one symptom of the larger structure that really we know unfairly discriminates and unfairly reconciles people to living lives that are less than what they are supposed to be. So we want to see people thrive, but we also have to make sure that we are addressing the core issues in a way that reflects and respects our culture and the abilities that we have. So thank you again for the question. It is a question that I grapple with personally all the time, but we have to keep moving forward, and we have to make sure that we are using all the levers that we have. And so organizing at the grassroots level is one of the best places to start. And that can touch all of the levels of government that we talk about.
Dr. Curry, you've given us a lot to think about, and thank you to you, Ms. Doradas, for posing that question. Now, for our final question, let's return to Chloe.
I'm a junior in Girl Scouts, and we do more than just sell cookies, We plant trees and clean up around our community. I feel like I'm helping the earth, but am I doing enough?
Thank you, Chloe. Your question highlights one of our root questions that we hear not just from young people, but also others at all ages. Liz, I ask you to please respond to Chloe.
Thank you, Almita. Chloe, you are already doing so much to help the earth. Every action you take, no matter how big or small, makes a difference. And there's millions of people around the world who are working just as hard as you to help address the problem of climate change in every way that we can. So while not every person shares the same power or responsibility to address climate change, we all play an important role. And as a Girl Scout, you're already engaging in community action, which is a key building block of the change that is needed at all levels. And in fact, talking about climate change is one of the best things that we can do to help tackle climate change because it motivates others to learn more and also take action. And so just remember that taking action also means taking care of ourselves and each other. So it's important to be gentle with yourself and call on people around you, like your family, your teachers, or other Girl Scouts for support.
Thank you, Liz and Chloe. That was a great answer, and Chloe, thank you for that very thoughtful question. Before we complete part 2 of our conversation, I'm asking each member of the panel in a lightning round to answer the following question. What advice do you have for our audience or even for yourselves about remaining optimistic about the challenges around climate, mental health, environmental justice, and health equity? We'll begin with Lorena, then Liz, and we'll end with Venise. Lorena?
Yeah, so thank you, Anita. We have talked about self-advocacy today and self-care and how to be an active change, how to be an agent of change. And today I love to leave the conversation with two things that come to mind. And the number one is that you and I and everybody that is suffering for what is going on in the world, we're not alone. And our stresses and our fears about the climate crisis are valid. And number two is that our natural world is there and have been always there for us. So if I can say something to myself and can be reflected on the people that is listening, is to remind myself to go outside and reconnect with nature and let nature to be this agent that have always been there for me. So when I go outside and play and I smell the fragrances of the air, I also doing my part on saving the world.
Thank you, Lorena. Liz?
Optimism and hope, like Lorena stated, can come from connecting with practices like going outdoors or finding the beauty in nature, spending time with loved ones, really anything that helps to restore our well-being. And we really also have to focus on looking internally and being fully aware of those thoughts and feelings and validate them. As we've heard on this discussion, it's really important to remind ourselves that we're not alone and that these feelings are normal and valid. So I encourage everyone to find whatever it is that they enjoy, make time for reflective self-care, and really lean on each other for support, because together we are really a powerful force. And especially in a time like this where we have, a changing climate, we really have the power to drive meaningful and equitable solutions for our communities.
Thank you, Liz. And now, Venise, if you would give us your thoughts.
Thank you so much. I think the first thing I would say is that we have this opportunity. And as much as we recognize the dangers and the challenges, climate change gives us an opportunity to do some resetting. and resetting around equity and what it means to have communities that actually thrive and are not marginalized. And so to that end, I say, do the first thing with self-examination. And what are your skills and your abilities? Because you have some, and how you use them can really help to shore up your mental health. Secondly, make sure that you are staying connected to your community, to your culture, to your belief system and values, because that will help anchor you for the challenges that you are presented with, whether or not that's climate change or other life factors and forces. And then thirdly, I would say, connect to what you consider a higher power and a higher goal, because that will help to be your shining star and your guiding light, and will help provide sort of the backdrop for why you keep moving forward when you feel so challenged. And so your mental health is important. Your value as a person is critical. Your voice and your energy is really unique. And in that space, you have the potential to really be a part of the solution. And I encourage each of you to be a part of the solution in whatever way that you can, however you have, feel passionate about. And lastly, I would say, if you are 16, about to be 17, if you are going to be voting age, absolutely commit to voting, to registering to vote, and then participating in every single election, because your voice will make a difference. And I really appreciate the questions and also the opportunity. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really am encouraged by the optimism that the three of you have shared with us today. And on behalf of the 1.5 million moms, dads, and caregivers at Moms Clean Air Force and our co-host, the Environmental Defense Fund, the Medical Society Consortium on Climate and Health, Climate Psychology Alliance NA, we thank each person joining us today for part 2 of our conversation, and a special thank you to our panel and those asking questions, Dr. Venise Curry, Ms. Lorena Saavedra Smith, and Ms. Liz Hurtado, along with those asking today's thoughtful questions, Carlos Fenwick, Chloe, and Ms. Gina Dorades. In closing, please remember an important part of grassroots advocacy is being informed and taking action. Go to our website and take advantage of our multiple resources about today's topic. And please use the QR code at the end of our program to show your support for House Resolution 259, Promoting Youth Mental Health and Well-Being in a Changing Climate, and House Resolution 262, Supporting the Teaching of Climate Change in Schools. Join us again for our future conversations about clean air, climate, health equity, and inequity. I'm Almita Cooper, the National Manager for Health Equity at Moms Clean Air Force.